Hi fancy fans, I'm here at the dog park again and we're just taking a little stroll around while we talk about what we're going to have in the video. I've got to look down here to make sure I don't trip in any puddles or mud puddles. Trying out features on my new camera, seeing how it looks in 1440p. This week we'll be talking about a really cool art project I have in mind. I got a really fun looking dress off a Dress Lily, which is advertised on Facebook, and I really liked the look of it. It was really fun, had these fun buttons and a pattern and a little hood, but you know, of course these things are made really cheap overseas, and so I thought I could make some improvements on it. I'm going to try lining it and also retouching the opening and adding more and different buttons to the front closure so it looks more like a sweater dress and less like, you know, some weird pajamas. And I think I can make a lot of improvements, and I just got a new dress form for Christmas, so I'm really excited to use it. Thanks, Dad. I gotta get that all set up and adjusted to look like me. I think that'll be a really fun project to set up. And my arm is getting really tired, so we'll just get started. Here is my new dress form I got for Christmas, and I'm just now pulling it out to get started. So read the instructions a little bit, and then put the base together, and put the little feet on. And here is the padding so that it can be fitted even better. Read the instructions a little bit, and then we'll start popping on the little, I don't know, thing that holds the pads on, and that can also stick pins in it, which is going to be really useful. And we're going to go ahead and just sort of manually measure the dress form against myself. And we have to adjust both the inner base dress form and put the pads on and adjust it some more, and then adjust it a little bit for height, and we're done. Here is the dress I got off of Dress Lily, and I just loved the little pattern with the reindeer on it, and the green, my favorite color, and the hood and everything. And I was so paranoid about getting it in the right size that I got it one size up than from what I needed after all. Vacuuming with my dog is always funny. And here I'm going to cut this little bottom frill thing off, and I was going to keep it and line it at first, but I've changed my mind. It's too much trouble to deal with. I'm just going to cut it off and not use it at all. But as you can see, it kind of got in the way of putting the dress on because there was no buttons down there. You had to still pull it over your head. It seems kind of silly and awkward, and there were not enough buttons, so you know, you got like little openings between the buttons, and so you had to wear a shirt underneath, and I didn't really want to have to wear a shirt underneath if I didn't want to, so we'll be adding more buttons. And of course this is going to be a two-parter because this took so long, because I want to show you everything that I did. I'm making a pattern off of the original dress, and I picked this thin green cotton that I happen to have for the green, solid green top. Oh wait, I'm sorry, my bad. It's the other way around. I'm using the thin cotton for the patterned skirt part, and for the solid green top part I'm using an old sweater that kind of got some holes in it, and I had in my scrap pile to use for later. It's cashmere. It's an old cashmere sweater. So if you wanted to just kind of use some fancy material like cashmere or fun wools or anything like that, you know, just pop to the Goodwill or whatever thrift store you like and grab some. You know, if you get them like especially large, that's the best, because then you have more material to work with. Of course, I had help from my cats, and I had help from my dog. Whenever I'm on the floor, everybody wants to help. It's a good thing I had a babysitter today, or my son would be down here hepping too. So I missed my camera ran out of batteries, and I didn't get the entire patterning sequence, but you get the idea. Just lay out the different sections of your dress on the material and you know, chalk them out and cut them out. The sweater was a little bit harder because it was a bit smaller than I needed, so I had to, especially on this part, cut the corners off because, you know, there's this V shape anyways, and then I had enough extra to lengthen like the shoulder part. And so, you know, you're just kind of piecing it together. But you know, took a, you know, laid it out, thought about it, decided where I needed to cut it, and just winging it, really. And I used this technique where I poked the pins in along where my cuts were going to go so that I could pull the cloth back without messing it up and mark or cut the cloth underneath. And that seemed to work out pretty good. And take all the pins back out and mark that side. And we'll only do one of the front panels for you, so you don't have to watch this whole thing all over again. Here I am piecing the shoulder parts together as needed from what I cut off the bottom. And then I'll just like sew those. That doesn't need much of a hem, but especially for this cashmere stretchy sweater material, I did a zigzag seam to account for any unraveling and or stretchiness. I just needed a little triangle at the bottom. And as you'll see here coming up, it's a little bit of a challenge sewing those sort of points like that, which you run into in, here I'm umming, you run into in medieval garments, where you're trying to sew in a gore, which makes the dress wider and fluffier. You'd have to see if you don't know what I'm talking about. For the sleeve, I didn't bother to cut the sleeve open. I just cut it at the diagonal like that, with my cat's help. I'll pet that Dink, yes, his name is Humperdinck. We just call him Dink, he's the sweetest. He needs some tummy pets. Okay, here is the front side panel, and frustratingly there was not quite enough, so what I had to do is move the little strip of where you button the front and not line that part, so that part's going to be unlined, and then I had just barely enough for the front side panel, and I went ahead and did the same on the other side, but I don't show it. And make sure I got all the sides, and I cut the buttons off. I cut them off. You might want to take more care, maybe use a different tool to cut buttons off. It didn't quite leave holes, but I was too lazy to do it properly. And here I am sewing the little extra pieces I had to sew on to the back panel. And I'm sewing on the floor because in order to clean up this little area of the room, the rest of the room was kind of a mess, and I didn't want to have to move everything back around, and I didn't want to change camera angles, so I just sewed on the floor. But I do not recommend this. It's not great for your back. Okay, here we are pinning the back panel to the lower back panel, and when you get to the little point here, teensy bit challenging, but I ended up, when I got to that point on the sewing machine, I left the needle in the material, lifted up the foot, rotated the material like you're going around a regular corner, except it's kind of a angle instead of a corner. So maybe practice on something else first. But I think I did it pretty well, and there's just barely a rumple, which is totally fine because it's the lining of the dress. Oh, here you can see it. It's the lining of the dress, so you're not really going to see it when it's being worn anyways, so no big deal. And here I'm doing the other seam, and like I was saying, for the cotton I just did a straight seam, and for the cashmere I did a zigzag seam to keep all of the threads together, and also it was stretchy, so zigzags is good for that. And here I'm doing the shoulders, where the back panel shoulder meets the front panel shoulder, and that actually makes it into a garment. You're like, oh, it has sleeves now. And here I'm working on the sleeves, and I did it backward. Tomo, get off of there! I did it backwards. So you'll see here in a sec. Oh, I had to sew the sleeve into a tube first, but that's, yeah. So I poked the lower part of the sleeve into the upper part of the sleeve, like one's inside out and one's right side out, and that's how you do sleeves when you sew onto the actual garment. So I thought that would work for the connecting parts too, but because it's done on an angle like this, I got the angles upside down, and when I turned it right side out it became an elbow, so I accidentally sewed an elbow into my dress. That was not gonna work. So, oopsie. Yeah, here you'll see in a second. Yeah, so I had to seam rip that, and I'm gonna start over next time. On part 2, we'll fix the problem with the sleeve, we'll sew the interior lining to the exterior part of the dress, sew everything back together, add the hood, and I'm going to line the hood with some material and or, well, definitely some faux fur. I've got some faux fur laying around, and trim the hood with the fur. So we'll see you next week. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, and we'll catch you later. Thanks. Oh yeah, Dandelion. Oh yeah, I love Dandelion. Oh, he's so funny. Do a watercolor of Dandelion being schmoozy.